All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the McKinney Podcast, where we celebrate what makes us unique by nature. How's it going, Fred?
It is going fantabulous, and I'm still going to make a petition to see if we can't release the entire recording session like one big Netflix season release.
I don't know how we're going to do that.
For binging.
You know what? What if we put it out to a vote and see what the people want?
Yes.
Because if we release all the episodes that we're recording today and tomorrow, then it's going to be probably a month and a half after people are done binging before they get to have the next batch.
That's true.
So,
and as someone who grew up on same bat time and same bat channel, that cliffhanger,
yeah,
it's probably best that we don't.
I don't know about you. I'm a creature of habit. I really prefer to have things happen the same way for what I can control, because for work, I mean, I don't have any control over what happens at work. That's the problem when you and I do what we do.
That's right.
Anything that I can put some systems around, like on Monday mornings about 6 a.m., a new episode of McKinney Podcast drops. So every Monday, like clockwork, and people get in the habit. Oh my gosh, it's Monday. I'm going to listen to this week's episode and whatnot. So I don't know. You still have some convincing to do, my friend.
Yeah, but for me, when that new when it hits, I typically don't listen until maybe 8 or 9 o'clock at night, when I can finally get around to, because Mondays typically I'm shooting with somebody, and it'd be kind of rude of me to be, hang on, listen to the latest podcast. Oh, that would be great marketing. But yeah, so I tend to just let things run in the background for many series on end.
So when we made our list of guests before this podcast was ever launched, before George sat down here for episode 1, this lady sitting across from us was on our list from the very beginning. And I could not be more interested in what she's got to say about her life and career, about what she's doing as the leader of McKinney Community Development Corporation, commonly referred to as MCDC or just CDC. Sorry to the Centers for Disease Control, but the real CDC is the Community Development Corporation.
That's right. This is the CDC that people are happy about.
It was very confusing during COVID.
I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
Sure.
But let's give this wonderful lady the introduction that she deserves. Cindy Schneible joined the McKinney Community Development Corporation in 2010. She's responsible for overseeing its $24 million annual budget, developing strategic goals and priorities for board investment in McKinney community, and providing day-to-day management of the organization. MCDC was founded in 1996 when voters approved designated 1/2 cent sales tax for investment in community and economic development corporations that enhance the quality of life of the good people of McKinney. Cindy has been here since 1997, right?
As a resident.
As a resident of McKinney. But she's been in leadership for MCDC since 2010. So I'm just going to skip the rest of it because all of that's going to come up in conversation. What I will say is that before MCDC, Cindy served as the vice president for the Susan G. Komen Foundation that focuses on breast cancer research and things around that side of advocacy and whatnot. So please welcome to the McKinney Podcast, Miss Cindy Schneible.
Thank you.
Whew. Man, I love it when folks have a big, thick, fat resume. Been doing great things in our city for a long time. And the perspective that you have as a resident of our city for, 26, 27 years now, it's phenomenal. So, man, where do we start? Do we start at the beginning? Yeah. Tell us about growing up, tell us the early career, leading up into before you come to McKinney, and then we'll have the how did you find McKinney? How did you make the decision there? What were your early years like?
Sure. Actually, let's go with the hard question. Did your feet first touch Texas soil, or were you born somewhere else?
No, I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. Graduated from the Ohio State University.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Yeah, so
Ohio
big
State.
week
The
for us.
national champion.
That's right.
Ohio
Go
State
Bucks.
University. That's right.
So graduated from Ohio State, degree in political science. My father said, what in the world are you going to do with that? Because I'm not paying for you to go to law school. And so when I graduated, I went to work for the Ohio General Assembly, worked in the political realm for about 9 years before my husband and I moved down here. He was transferred with his work, worked for a North Texas congressman for about 6 years, and then went to work for the Komen Breast Cancer Foundation, helped build their Race for the Cure series from 24 events to just over 100 nationwide. And from there, worked for a short time for another cancer support nonprofit. And while I was there, saw an announcement of a position open with the McKinney Community Development Corporation. And I looked at it, and based on the requirements of the position and the background they were looking for, my background seemed to me like a great fit between sort of the political world and nonprofit world, government and nonprofit. So put my resume in the mix and ended up there in 2010, and it's been a great experience. I think every position that I've had, I've been really fortunate in my work life because I've really liked every job that I've had. And I was thinking about it. We went through the process of hiring a new team member last summer and was asked the question, what's important to you when you're looking at a job opportunity? And I thought about it and thought back over the years that I've been working. Every position has had the opportunity to make a difference, to make an impact in people's lives, whether it's a small community or a national community, like with the Komen Foundation. So that's how I ended up here.
Man, I love that.
So you mentioned your degree, and did politics ever did you ever think that you might run for an office? Or
I did early on. I could see it. The political environment's very different now than when I was working for the Ohio Senate. It's a little bit more difficult for me to see it at this point, for me.
Well, it's difficult for McKinney to see it because we're like, don't go.
There's two kinds of people in politics. There's people that see themselves as a candidate or as an office holder. And then there's the professional political operatives that work to do the actual governing, the legislative directors and the staffs and the aides and all the people that are the engine of government. So, anytime someone is, thinking about politics, it's always the question of, do you have delusions of grandeur? Do you see yourself in that big seat of authority, or are you more the kind of person who likes the maneuvering, the intrigue, the diplomacy and professional negotiating to make government happen behind closed doors?
For me, I think it's more the latter. I like being able to problem solve. I like being able to help make connections for people or ideas, and then help bring them to fruition. I think that's probably more my cup of tea.
That was my guess.
Yeah.
Just from what I've seen of you and know of you in a public sense. You and I met today officially for the first time. We've shook hands at city council meetings a couple of times, but we've never been face to face. We've never had a full conversation. So that's what you just described is exactly what I would have expected you to say based on what I've seen from you so far. So I'm glad the public persona and what Cindy thinks of herself match up pretty well. So I got to say, I got to hand it to you, lady. You are held in the very highest regard. Mm-hmm. Anytime your name comes up, it is she's great, or some version of that. You've done a marvelous job as far as the circles of McKinney of building and keeping and maintaining just the very most sterling of reputations. I don't know of anybody who said anything even slightly negative about Cindy Schneible. So congratulations on being very well thought of and admired in your city.
I appreciate the kind words. I've had the great fortune of being able to work with really great people, especially in this role in the city of McKinney. I mean, I think it truly is a place where people are open to partnerships, open to collaboration, open to working together to get things done. And that, for me, that's important. And it makes it all work.
So anytime I get to talk to someone who has chosen to live their professional life in a specific sector, I'm always interested to ask the questions of, how did you pick that? And just from what you've accomplished in your career, the way you carry yourself, you're a woman of substance, of high drive, high work ethic. You're someone who is wired to achieve things and to make things. You're a builder kind of personality. You have the building blocks to be successful in any number of industries. What was it about the work of nonprofit organizations and now, civic, tier one kind of, civically engaged organizations? How did you choose that for a career?
I think a lot of it is just, how does it feel? How does it feel for you? But when I think about things important to me and things that I've seen, there's power in numbers. And the more that you can bring people together in collaboration, the more significant impact an individual can have or an organization can have. So I think that's probably what draws me or has drawn me to the choices that I've made career-wise.
Can you point to anyone in your younger years that inspired you along this path? You hear about somebody who listened to a classical composition and they're like, I want to, violin, and all of a sudden they're doing that. Was there somebody that you can think of impacted you that way, or you just looked up to as a child or as a young adult?
If I think back to childhood, I'd have to say my dad was really the one that sort of introduced all of us to the world of politics, because that was something important to him. And he ran a trade association in Ohio, was a lobbyist for 30 plus years. So
but he wasn't paying for law school.
He wasn't paying for law school. So I had that early on. When I went to work for the president of the Ohio Senate, there were a couple different senators that really made a big impact on me because of their approach to their position, because of the character and integrity they demonstrated as they carried out their role and responsibilities. So I think that made a big impact. And then when I think back to early days with the Komen Foundation and Nancy Brinker as their founder, I mean, she is the picture of she was resolute about what she wanted to do, and her resilience and determination in getting things done. And I think showed all of us one person can indeed make a difference when they set their mind to something. So I think there have been several. And then in the role at CDC, since I started, I've been fortunate to have really terrific board members who first and foremost have been committed to McKinney, not in it for any personal or political agenda, but really committed to the city. And that to me, again, it's important, that kind of example and that kind of demonstration of individual character and integrity.
Excellent. I love your advocacy, as it were, for people and for our community. It's funny you mentioned the board members, because when we moved here at the end of 2010 and then started up the photography business, I did get to meet you. I think it was 2011, 2012, somewhere in there, and it was one of the first times that I remember looking and going, I've got to show up at 7:30. I mean, you guys meet early. And I had no idea, what on earth is this McDick? That's what I call it, MCDC, because that's what was in the calendar. I was like, McDick. I was like, what is this? And I do have to, absolutely agree with you, the people on the board, because that's who I got to photograph. But when I photographed them, I didn't know who they were. But as my time and tenure here in McKinney grew, and I got to see these people, I was like, oh, I photographed her. I photographed him. And I was like, man, these, that's why they had their meeting so early, is because this is something additional to what they normally do. But for our listening audience, share with us, what is the CDC and how does that differ from the EDC? Because sometimes I hear people talk and I'm like, no, actually they just think because McKinney is in there, anything, this sidewalk needs to be repaired. CDC needs to handle that because that's community. I'm like,
that's not so much.
Yeah, not so much. So tell what is the CDC?
So under state law, there are two types of economic development corporations: Type A, which is MEDC, and Type B, which is MCDC. They're both have a very specific list of eligible projects that they can fund. EDC is really more, I think of it as more traditional economic development. It's headquarters relocation, incentive for job creation, infrastructure for office, and other development projects. CDC can do that, but in addition, we can fund affordable housing. We can fund development of open space into parks park facilities, community facilities, hike and bike trails, entertainment facilities like the Performing Arts Center. So the voters, when they approved both organizations in McKinney, really showed great vision, because the combination of the two allows you to cover so much ground in terms of enhancing quality of life in our community.
You know, when Mike Kowski was sitting right here a few months ago, you know, having that conversation, it was basically, you know, talking to a head football coach who's on the recruiting trail. You know, so much of what EDC does is enticing people to move their business or to invest their business here in McKinney. You know, whether it's, you know, a new hotel that's going to open a location, or, you know, finding, you know, opportunities for partnering with the city, like with Sunset Amphitheater and whatnot. The other side of the coin, it's almost like a peanut butter and jelly sort of thing with EDC and CDC, where distinctly different. You're never going to confuse peanut butter with jelly or jelly with peanut butter. But man, when they come together, ooh, that's a good sandwich with a tall glass of milk.
It's powerful.
It really is. You know, CDC has potentially a broader mandate than EDC does, because CDC can cross over and do some EDC kind of things, but you'll never see EDC doing some of the things that CDC does really well. And talk about that for a little bit, how you guys are complementary, but also, you know, very unique when compared to, you know, the type A organization of EDC.
Right. One of the things that we have seen, and I think if you look, research sort of bears it out, when you think about the desirability of a community, when companies are thinking about where to locate, there are a lot of things they take into consideration. The market analysis certainly is part, but they look at the overall environment, and they're trying to find a place that matches up with what their employees are looking for. So on the EDC side, they may have the ability to fund incentives for relocation or for job creation. On the CDC side, we can help make that environment that's right for the employees. We can help fund the parks, community parks and neighborhood parks that are important to people, hike and bike trails, the entertainment facilities that are important to them. So I think it works. The two organizations work hand in hand on a lot of projects, and then you add into the mix the city as sort of the third piece, because there are specific things the city can fund as well with respect to infrastructure, city services, and those kinds of things which we cannot. So, and I think that what I've seen in the city of McKinney is there's such a strong commitment to partnership and collaboration. There's a realization that if you all work together and manage what each one can do, consider the resources you bring to the table, you can just cover a lot more ground.
So taking this down to ground floor level, to being really practical, a lot of the folks that listen to this podcast do so purely for entertainment value. They find the conversations intellectually stimulating and enjoyable, and your curiosity, we scratch the curiosity itch around here pretty well. There's another group of listeners that have said, you know, pretty clearly they like the podcast because it helps them understand how to better engage with the way to get things done around here. You know, ideation is not a problem. Execution typically is the problem. Lots of people listening to this podcast have a great idea for a grant, for a project, for something to beautify or improve life around McKinney. How in the world do you suggest that a citizen living here in McKinney, listening to this episode, what's the best way for an idea to get legs, to find a seat at a committee where someone is hearing a proposal or an idea, or even just grabbing a cup of coffee and talking about something that someone wants to see done? How does the process go from idea to consideration to execution, actually happening here in McKinney?
I think it can happen in a lot of different ways. A lot of times it's somebody on the other end of the phone in our office who has an idea for something, especially if it's park related or athletic facility related, those kinds of things. Picking up the phone and calling CDC or the Economic Development Corporation or the city manager's office, or talking to their councilman. The ideas sort of start percolating that way. One of the things that we find is a little bit confusing for residents, because we invest in quality of life projects, there sometimes is not an understanding that that's true, but they are defined in state law, what we can and cannot fund. So sometimes there's a great idea that would be a great addition to the city of McKinney, but we're not the appropriate vehicle to make it happen. So in that,
Sure.
you try to steer them to whether it is private funding or working with an existing nonprofit, just to see where the fit is, where it makes sense.
So to provide some specific examples so people kind of understand exactly what sort of stuff. I mean, the list of what CDC has been involved in the last few years is very long and distinguished, of course, but give some of your favorite examples, 4 or 5 of projects that CDC has been directly involved in, instrumental in delivering to the good people of McKinney.
So the one, there are a number of them, but one that's at the top of the list is the Apex Center in Gabe Nesbitt Park, that recreational facility. CDC funded, I think, 35 out of the 36 million for the cost of that project. So huge project for us. The renovation of the McKinney Performing Arts Center, which happened just before I started with CDC, but really transformed an old courthouse into a showpiece in downtown. More recently, we invested in the creation of the TUPPS campus, the construction of the TUPPS campus to serve as a catalyst project for East McKinney. Very different kind of project for us because that's one where we made the investment and we actually will get paid back for that over time through lease payments because we own the land where that is located. We invested in Dallas Star Center early on. We invested recently in the plaza area at the new municipal complex, which will be a great space for people to congregate and to celebrate our community.
Yeah, that whole city hall development area is just amazing. And the other day I was actually headed down past TUPPS towards La Tiendita, and I looked over, and I mean they're still doing things over there. And of course, I did that, and then I looked back over towards City Hall, and because that's actually open now, correct?
It is.
It is.
Everybody has moved in as of the end of last week.
How about that?
Yeah.
Finally. So now the big overpass park thing is the next thing there. Well, so once they iron out the street and all that other stuff, that'll be much better. So you've mentioned parks and things like that. So when what is that community? Paint a Tree? Yeah, Paint a Tree. They're actively working on that. Did the CDC have direct impact direct involvement in the development of the Paint a Tree area there, or?
We did not. I know that the Parks and Rec team worked with them, especially with respect to the open lands that are being developed and the trails that are being developed, but that was not one we've been directly involved in. We are involved in the updates to Irwin Park that are now underway. So sort of in that same general area. I was thinking about if you drive through McKinney, if you start down around Alpha and 121 and just start heading sort of northeast, there really isn't an area of the city that hasn't been touched by CDC in some way. There's District 121 and Hub 121, Craig Ranch Soccer Fields, Veterans Memorial Park, Gabe Nesbitt Park, Bonnie Wink. I mean, as you keep moving through the city, you can see the impact that CDC has had. And really, it's a reflection of the residents and visitors' interest in McKinney because our revenue comes from sales tax. So people who are dining here, shopping here, are contributing to that investment that's made back into their community.
And that's your sole source of revenue, right?
It is, except for on the TUPPS project, there would be revenue.
Except for like land lease there.
Yeah. It is, and it sounds like when you talk about half cent, you think that's not really very much. That's $24 million this year. So every little bit, I mean, it mounts up to something quite. We've used the word impact a lot, but quite impactful. In real pragmatic things that people can touch and see and taste and feel. It's not some ethereal, subjective thing of, we're making the city better. It's like, no, there's actually things that are here that would not be here if it weren't for
McKinney. You know, the residents of McKinney get the Apex. We're members of the Apex. I work out there regularly. Kids love it during the summer. I mean, we've been to Gabe Nesbitt. I don't know how many times. I can't even count how many times we've been to Gabe Nesbitt for various things, whether it's a soccer game or softball or whatever. And
We still haven't done pickleball.
we still haven't done pickleball.
What's holding you back?
Fred and I have
Do you
never
pickleball?
played pickleball. No, no, and I can't.
Not yet.
I can't say that. I played in Branson, Missouri. We stayed at a resort back during fall break last year, and we played pickleball on the court at that resort. And that's literally the first time I've ever set foot on a pickleball court. And I will say, I learned very quickly that being tall with long arms is a benefit in
Oh,
pickleball.
absolutely.
You hardly have to move at all,
That's
right?
You can hang
Yeah.
out and dink in the kitchen all day long
But I
without
mean,
moving.
I played racquetball a lot back in the day, back in college, before I realized that a lot of racquetball playing is not so good for the tendons in your elbow. Tennis elbow can also be called racquetball elbow.
Well, when I played racquetball in college, it was more like, let's take the elements of full contact football and mix in a ball. And, you know, I played in the fully enclosed court. And so the guys I played against, they were all in. I didn't know if it was racquetball or hockey because, you know, I'm going for it and bam, you know, I was like, what is this? So, you know, it was very different for me. And then when I played in an open racquetball court, it wasn't any good because balls are
Well,
just
that being
flying.
said, you know, what it's not called the pickler. What is it?
It's the Quartz McKinney.
The Quartz McKinney.
Yes.
Thank you. The pickler is the one off of Custer.
Yeah.
It's about to open.
Yes.
It's a for-profit thing. It's not a city project.
That's right.
But we went to the Quartz McKinney there at Gabe Nesbitt and was just observing. It was during work hours. I forget why I was over there, but I happened to be around. And I just stopped there for 10, 15 minutes just to see the place. And my word, those folks are serious
Yeah, very
athletes.
serious.
And I'm like, wow, I may lose to someone 10, 15, 20 years older than me. Now, I'm 40 years old. I'm a little bit out of shape, got some dad bod going on, but I'm reasonably athletic. And I'm looking at these people that are, probably around Cindy's age or plus or minus 5 or 10 years. I'm like, my word, these folks get around. Like they're picklers or pickleballers or whatever they call themselves. Yeah.
I several years ago, was meeting at Old Settlers. They were talking about some renovations there, and they used the gym for pickleball then, and I had to walk through there, and I thought I was the target for those people that were playing. I mean, they had no regard for me trying to dodge through that gym.
Yeah, watch out. You'll
it's
take a
grown.
paddle to the face.
There's a huge pickleball tournament that's coming to McKinney in March of this year. We're at over 1,000 people will be playing or something
Cannot
like that.
wait.
It's crazy.
Oh. Are you going to be in it?
I'm not going to be in it.
Come
but
on
I'll
now.
Be there watching.
Come on now.
Is
I
it
think
going
CDC
to be
should put together a
at
team.
the
At
Quartz
the courts.
McKinney?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I'll have my 300 by then. I'll be good and ready.
Listen, I was there. They had I photographed a pickleball tournament that they had there not too long ago, and from the high school teenage class up to the seniors. I mean, at first, because I was like, I have no idea what I'm getting into here, just taking pictures. But the senior class, they were working just as hard and moving around, and all I could look, I said, that's goals. I don't know what age that is, but I want to be able to move like that and talk that level of smack when I get to be that age. But okay, so
we have about 3 minutes of our episode left to comply with Cindy's timeline.
Yes. So how do you, as the CDC, get your information for what is and is not a good fit for our community? Do you go to other communities and look at what they have and what they've done? How do you get better at what you're doing?
We look at other communities, but there are a lot of people that we talk to that are visiting McKinney because they're attracted to McKinney and have ideas that they want to propose. So it's sort of a combination, and it's interesting. In some cities, if you look at how the Type B corporations have operated in different cities, McKinney really is unique in the portfolio of events or projects and events, because we do promotional grants as well, but of the projects that are funded, a lot of times it may be limited just to parks development or just limited to the construction of new athletic fields, where our portfolio really is much more diverse. And I think to the credit of City Council and to the credit of the city manager's team, being able to look beyond what some other cities are doing and figure out what's right for McKinney. A lot of it is I mean, all of us, EDC, CDC, Visit McKinney, all of our strategic goals are put in place to advance the goals of council. So there's that. We're not just off doing our own thing. It's all with the goal of everybody working together and advancing the council goals for the city.
How great is it for where you're sitting to have the other people that are in your ecosystem, from Amy at Parks and Rec, to Paul at the city manager's office, to the folks at EDC with Mike Kowski and the whole team at EDC, to having a council that is as pragmatic and forward-thinking as they are. Everybody that wants to complain in the comment section of McKinney Cares, it's always about, the traffic, the noise, it's not the McKinney that it used to be. I just have such a hard time understanding that mentality because it's always getting better. Even if something is not getting better to your taste, like having the opportunity to have all of these things happen with so many power players, that's got to be a lot of fun for you to be in a municipal setting with so many people that are itching to make stuff happen.
It's really, from my perspective, an extraordinary environment because you do find people that they're not in it for themselves. They're not in it for what they want to achieve individually. They really are in it for the entire team and committed to the city of McKinney.
Yeah, and I think that shows with how much our community has grown and just attracted more people to come in. So, on behalf of the McKinney citizenry, thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
We'll have to have you back at some point. I feel like we just barely scratched the surface. Sometime later on in the spring, we'll figure out a different topic to tackle. Maybe a little bit more meat and potatoes, nuts and bolts of CDC world. But out of respect for your time, we're going to go ahead and wrap the episode up. We don't have time for lightning round, unfortunately. No. Cindy's got stuff she's got to get back to. Wow, what a great brief conversation. Thank you so much for the work that you do, leading one of the most important organizations in all of McKinney. I hope the listeners out there have gained a little bit of a better understanding on what's happening behind the scenes they may not even be aware of how things come to be the way that they are for our great city. So
if people want to know more about the CDC,
bingo.
What's the website that they can go to?
It's McKinneyCDC.org.
Perfect. McKinneyCDC.org, and that'll be in the show notes, folks. And if you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description of the video down below. She is Cindy Schneible, Executive Director, President. One of those big titles.
That's right.
President of the McKinney Community Development Corporation. And this has been another episode of the McKinney Podcast, where we celebrate what makes us unique by nature. Until next time, folks, y'all take care.